When you work with task-based vocabulary, then I think most dancers are bound to feel a little vulnerable, because you know when there's a task given to you, all dancers have a different kind of take on the task and produce different results, have different solutions, and eventually the choreographer picks out the ones that are probably relevant to her work. And at this point, because we're kind of programmed from the very beginning to kind of see things as right or wrong, selected or not selected, I think there is a sense of loss at this point, where you feel like, oh, it's am I not doing it properly? Am I not getting the task? Or I think over time you just realize that the dancer's role is really to just throw up ideas, and beyond a point, the key is not to be over attached to what you produce, because things would change and things would be weeded out. So it really is about being quite open to throwing away a lot of material that you produce in the studio. The fast sequence that we start with in the beginning of Faultline is actually has 3 layers. What we started with was a sequence that had more to do with how the spine moves, and one of the other tasks we did was look at a Bharatanatyam sequence, with really Bharatanatyam gestures and relating to a story that it was based on. And the third task was looking at the characters in the film, Pete Gomez's film, and picking out certain gestures that they were doing, or certain interpretations of the characters from the dancer's point of view. The character is a British Asian lad who has a certain way of moving, is laddish, is competitive, and also has this kind of angst about him, great sense of vanity, where it's a very well-groomed character. He can look a bit threatening. I think the biggest challenge I faced in Faultline in the beginning was not being able to identify with these characters that we're looking at. They had a certain way of moving, a certain strut, and I just felt like, okay, this is really completely alien to me, so how do I identify with that and try and copy that? Then over time what I realized was that instead of miming these characters, I could probably just kind of break it down physically as to exactly what they're doing. So when we made the material, I looked at it physically. Okay, there's a flick of the hand, but the hip on the other end is really jutting out. So by analyzing it physically, I know it sounds really clinical, I ended up kind of making sense of it physically. And then over time, by rehearsing it, I realized that before I knew it, the character had kind of grown on me, instead of me having to force it on me. Another element to the character is that in the book, the character has a very strong tie with his mother. So, you will see that the character will just suddenly get a call from mom, and the whole tone just changes completely. And, and what this character really deals with is 2 lives at the same time. There's the life on the street, then there's the other life, which is respecting your elders, and of course the change of language, because he's probably talking to his mum in Hindi or Punjabi. In that part, I actually identified with quite a lot with the character. You push the technique over the edge to get the character, but then again brought the technique in to contain that to a certain level. I think especially in the beginning of the piece, where things are really fast, you get out through the screen and it's fast gestures, and it's really and it's got sudden pauses, and then it goes fast again, and there's a point where things suddenly slow down. It's almost like somebody's pressed slow motion, and that's where you feel that your technique just comes into play, because you're just so full of velocity at that point, where to slow things down you've got to use all that you have, all that you've ever learned, to kind of control that speed and get back into the slow motion mode again. What we do in the studio, you could also look at it another way, where each dancer brings a suitcase with clothes that belong to him or her, and you share them with other dancers. And what eventually happens during the process is that your clothes may be cut, resized, discarded, dyed, and cut and restitched again. And at this point, you invariably feel that you feel a bit possessive about your clothes, and you feel like, oh God, I need to preserve the clothes in the same shape and the same size. And so there is a certain amount of letting go that is required, because you've got to kind of believe in the fact that, okay, I can give away all that I have, because I know what I will get eventually is going to fit really well on my body, because it'll be designed for me.